What's up, guys? This is going to be the full card breakdown for UFC Fight Night, Whittaker versus Till. It's coming up later today, 5 o'clock start time for the prelims. 15 fights on this card. There's a lot of favorites. I did find a couple of dog spots, but, for the most part, as far as betting goes, there'll be a few parlays on this card, a lot more than usual. And like I said, it is a big card. It's not very often we get 15 fights where they all go through. I'm pretty sure nothing has dropped off of the lineup that I have here, so... I am going to go through a couple of them pretty quick just because I'm not going to be putting money down on them. Not really interested in a couple, but overall it is a good card. So first fight of the night, we got Nathaniel Wood and John Castanada. So Nathaniel Wood's coming off a loss to John Dodson in his last fight. I think he was underestimating Dodson, but Dodson's always dangerous. He's really fast, and he's seen it all in there. So really good experience for Wood in that fight. I know he's going to be hungry to pick up a win, probably going to be looking for a finish. Hopefully he doesn't underestimate Castanada because, of course, this is going to be his UFC debut. He's going to be really hungry as well. And, we've seen, especially this year, a lot of guys making their UFC debut come in and win fights they weren't expected to win. So I don't underestimate Castanada here. I just think Nathaniel Wood has that experience. He's going to be hungry. He's going to be focused. He is really talented, and I think he's just going to overwhelm Castanada. So I'm going to say... Nathaniel Wood by TKO in the second round. Next up, we got Ramazan Emeev and Nicholas Stolze. So Ramazan's a good fighter, coming off a loss in his last fight to Rocco Martin, I believe it was. A lot of people expected him to win that, but Rocco Martin's a tough guy. He's been in there with the top of the division and has some big wins. So it's, again, some good experience for Ramazan in that fight. I do think that he'll be able to get it done here. Nicholas Stolze, he's a pretty good fighter as well. I think he'll be underestimated coming in, but he hasn't had that UFC experience, right? And I think that Emeev's going to be really comfortable. I think he'll be able to implement his game plan and get it done. So I'm going to say Ramazan Emeev by decision. Next up, we got Betchkahea and Penny Kianzad. So, Betchkahea is always going to come out to fight. She's pretty well-rounded. She's picked up some wins that she definitely wasn't expected to get, and she's going to come to fight, especially against these girls that don't necessarily have that UFC experience that she has. She's always really hungry and aggressive in those fights. Penny Kianzad, though, she's a really tough girl as well. Jessica Rose Clark was her last opponent. She picked up a win in that fight by decision. Previous to that fight was Julia Vela, and she lost that one, I believe, but she does look good. I think that this is a good test for her. I'm not going to be putting anything down on this fight. I do think the line's pretty accurate, but I'm going to say Penny Kianzad to get it done by decision. Then we got Rafael Pessoa and Tanner Boser. So this one's interesting. When the line dropped, I wasn't really interested, but as the week progressed, now we see Pessoa up at plus 220 and probably even more on some other books. I don't think that Tanner Boser warrants that number at all. It could be a lot closer fight than that. At the same time, he had a really good performance against Felipe Lins, got the knockout in the first round. I believe it was the first round, but he looked really good in that fight. Heavy leg kicks, a lot of power in his hands. He looks really unassuming, not really in the best shape, but actually looked pretty good in his last fight. I think he was in a little bit better shape, but not one of those heavyweights that's really intimidating. Rafael Pessoa has some leg kicks as well. The only problem with Pessoa is, though, he does, run in with his chin up a lot of times, and I could see Boser catching him. So I do actually lean towards Boser, and I think that he should be the favorite, but not where the line's at. And I do think it's a decent bit off, so I did take a shot on Pessoa. Small shot, though. Like, if you're not confident in it or you were thinking about it, you don't need to put much down on a bet like that, right? This is just to take advantage of a line that's off. Now, there are a lot of favorites on this card that you would think, well, why aren't you taking the dog in that fight? It's not close enough where I think that the line's that much off. A few of these with Wood and even Emeev, they shouldn't be so wide, but at the same time, as parlay pieces, I am confident enough. 1 out of 5 won't hit, so you got to be strategic as to how you place them, but there are some parlay opportunities, like I said. So first dog of the night is going to be Rafael Pessoa, and I'm going to say by decision. Then we got Movsar Evloev and Mike Grundy. So this is another fight where I think the line's pretty accurate. Mike Grundy's a tough guy. He picked up a win in his last fight. I believe it was over Nad Nirmani, or that could have been the one. But yeah, it was Nad Nirmani, and he got the TKO the second round. He is pretty impressive. I think that Evloev has, a bit better experience on his record. He's one of those guys that once he gets a hold of you and takes you to the mat, he's going to be on you like glue. I do think he's going to have the grappling advantage in this fight. I expect him to get a decision here, so I'm going to be taking Movsar Evloev by decision. Could be a good fight, though. Then we got Jake Collier and Tom Aspinall. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this fight. Aspinall's a tough guy. He's a good boxer. A lot of fighters are pretty high on him. I do think that Aspinall is technically better, but he was tagged in one of the fights that I watched from him as well, so just not really comfortable in putting money on this one. But I'm going to say Tom Aspinall by TKO in the second round. Then we got Nicholas Dalby and Jesse Ronson. So Dalby's a tough guy, had some, higher level competition in his last few fights. I do think the line is a little bit off here. I think it should be closer to a pick'em. Jesse Ronson's going to come to fight. He is a tough guy. He's pretty well-rounded as well. He does have a lot of losses on his record, but nothing to be ashamed of. Nathan Schultz, a really good grappler from PFL. He won the $1 million 2 seasons in a row. And then, out of his last, 2, 4, 6, 8. So he's only lost 2 out of his last 8. He's been in there enough that you can consider him an experienced fighter. So it could be a good fight. Another fight that I'm not interested in putting money down on. But I'm going to say Nicholas Dalby by decision. Next up, we got Kazmat Chimaev and Rise McKee. This is really interesting because of the line. Rise McKee is going to be making his debut. He has a lot of Cage Warriors experience. Chimaev, came in on his debut, mauled John Phillips, looked really good. The over might be something to look at. I think it's set at 1.5. I could see McKee lasting. Chimaev does like to swarm his opponent early, so depending on how it works out, it might get to that over, but I'm going to say, because of the odds, Rise McKee by decision, but, Chimaev is definitely a threat. Next, we got Alex Oliveira and Peter Sobotta. So Alex Oliveira, he's been around for a long time now. He has a lot of high-level competition on his record. Pretty good technical fighter as well. I do edge it to him in this fight. He's going to be taking on Peter Sobotta. I haven't seen a lot from him recently, but he is a good fighter as well. I wouldn't be surprised to see him pick up a win. I'm not going to be betting on this. I think the line is pretty accurate. And again, Sobotta coming in and picking up a win wouldn't be that shocking to me. So I'm going to go with Alex Oliveira by decision, but this could be a good fight. Next up, we got Paul Craig and Gazmirad Antigulov. So this is another tough one. I don't really have a good read on this fight. It could go either way. I do think the line's pretty accurate. I won't be putting money on this fight. Slight lean towards Antigulov, but I'm not going to spend much time on this fight just because, like I said, I haven't looked into it enough and I won't be putting any money on it. So I'm going to go Antigulov by decision. Then we got Carlos Esparza and Marina Rodriguez. So Carlos Esparza normally coming into fights as the dog, no different here. And, I think that she's going to look to use her wrestling as she has in her last couple fights, but it's going to be another wrestler versus striker fight. And I do feel like Marina Rodriguez, if she does fight smart, use her distance, and her range, I do think she could pick up a decision win in this fight. In her last fight, Carlos Esparza did, take shots from far out, trying to get the takedown. And I think if she tries to do that in this fight, Rodriguez will read those shots, be able to stuff the takedowns, and like I said, get a decision. So I'm going to be going with Marina Rodriguez by decision. Then we got Fabricio Werdum and Alexander Gustafsson. So looking at Fabricio Werdum's last fight, it's hard to pick him in this one. I thought that he would beat Alexei Olenek. He looked terrible in that fight, completely out of shape. Didn't even look like he cared. It looked like it was a paycheck fight. Kind of surprising, coming from a guy like Werdum at one point looked at as probably one of the top, 2 or 3 heavyweights in the world. And to see him have a performance like that, definitely surprising. But he's taking on Alexander Gustafsson here. Gustafsson's first fight at heavyweight. He will be moving up. And I think, he's going to be faster. He's going to have the better striking. And if Werdum looks anything like he did in his last fight, it's not going to be a good night for him. So I am going to take Gustafsson here. I think that he'll be able to stuff the takedown, use his striking, and possibly even get the finish. So I'm going to say Alexander Gustafsson by TKO in the third round. Next up, we got the co-main event, Mauricio Shogun Hua and Antonio Rogerio Nogueira. These guys have fought twice before. Shogun got the win in both of those fights. I don't expect this one to go much different. I am kind of surprised the line's not a bit more, or who was not more of a heavy favorite, because I do expect him to get it done. Both of these guys getting up there in age, though. I mean, I think Shogun's 38 or 39, and Nogeuira's close to 45. So slight age advantage for Hua, but he's up there as well. I think he still has a bit of that speed and power, even though he has lost some, no doubt. But I'm going to be taking him to get it done here. I'll say Mauricio Shogun by TKO in the second round. Then we got the main event. This is a huge fight. Robert Whittaker and Darren Till. Robert Whittaker was a champion in a ton of wars. His 2 title fights with Yoel Romero proved the type of heart that he has and the skill. So, he's a tough fight for anybody. Darren Till, he's a guy that likes to come forward, bring the pressure. He's going to look for the knockout. And he's a really skilled guy as well. He's big for this division, coming up from 170, where he did have some rough losses. I think the fight with Tyrone Woodley was a little bit too early for him. But this fight, I think, is coming at the right time. And I have gone back and forth. I think that Till could get the knockout here. He's going to put the pressure on. He's going to go forward, and he's going to look to land that big shot. But Robert Whittaker could do the same thing. And I think both of these guys potentially could be a bit chinny, right, at this point. So I think the first big shot has a good chance to win. I don't think this one's going to go the distance. And I'm far more comfortable with that than betting on either of these two, because it is a toss-up for me. It could go either way. I'm going to lean towards Robert Whittaker just because of the experience, the 5-round fights. The wars that he's been in isn't necessarily an advantage for him because of the damage that he's taken in those fights. But like I said, I'll lean towards him. Definitely not going to bet on him, though. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Darren Till get the knockout. So it's going to be a really good fight. So I'll pull up the bets now. You'll see a lot of parlay options. The dog bet on Pessoa. Maybe a prop or two. I'm still putting together a couple of the parlays, but there are some options. It's one of those rare nights where I agree with a lot of the favorites. But hopefully we have a good night. Let me know who you guys have. Appreciate you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.